So now let's learn about AWS CloudFormation, which is one of my personal favorite services in AWS. So CloudFormation is a way for you to outline your AWS infrastructure for any resources for this using just code. For example, in a CloudFormation template, you're going to say, I want a security group. I want two EC2 instances that are going to be using the security group. I want elastic IPs for these EC2 instances. I want an S3 bucket. I want a load balancer in front of these EC2 instances. And then by declaring what you want, by just saying, hey, all these things should exist and they should be linked together, automatically CloudFormation will create them for you in the right order with the exact configuration that you specify. So this removes any need of doing manual configuration and manual work, and all the things is provisioned through CloudFormation. So a CloudFormation template is going to be some code, and the code will involve in a declarative way what you want your infrastructure to be composed of, and then we'll be able to visualize this infrastructure using Infrastructure Composer to see how the components relate to each other in CloudFormation. So why should you use AWS CloudFormation? Well, first, it is your infrastructure as code. That means that no resources are being manually created, which is going to be excellent for control, and all the code that makes up these CloudFormation templates can be used for version control, for example, using Git. Also, any changes to your infrastructure is going to be reviewed through code changes. In terms of cost, well, all the resources within your CloudFormation stack is going to be tagged with an identifier, so you can easily see how much a CloudFormation stack is going to cost you, and we can also estimate the cost of resources from your CloudFormation template. And finally, you can have saving strategy. For example, in your development environment, you could automate the deletion of the templates at 5 p.m. and recreate them automatically at 8 a.m. in a safe manner because everything is automated. For productivity, this is amazing because you have the ability to destroy and recreate an infrastructure on the cloud on the fly. And this is really leveraging the whole power of the cloud, which is to just create and delete things and only pay as you go. You also have automated generation of diagrams for your template, which is very good for your architecture diagrams. And it's declarative programming. So you don't need to figure out the order of the creation of the resources and the orchestration of things. All these things are done by CloudFormation for you. There's also a separation of concern. You can create many CloudFormation stacks for many applications and many layers. For example, you may want to have stacks for your network and your VPCs. You may want to have stacks for your applications and so on. Finally, you don't reinvent the wheel because you can leverage existing templates on the web and the documentation to quickly write your CloudFormation templates. Now, how does CloudFormation work? Well, your templates must be uploaded in Amazon S3 and then referenced from CloudFormation. So you upload it, and then from CloudFormation, you reference it, and a stack will be created. And what is a CloudFormation stack? Well, it is made of AWS resources, and it could be any kind of things you can create on AWS. If you wanted to update a template, you cannot edit the previous one. What we have to do is to re-upload a new version of the template to AWS and then update your stack. Now, your stacks are identified by a name within a region. And if you delete a CloudFormation stack, every single artifact and resource that was created by CloudFormation will be deleted. Now, how do we deploy CloudFormation templates? Well, there is the manual way in which we're going to use something like Infrastructure Composer or a code editor to directly create our CloudFormation templates. And then we use the console to input the parameters and so on. And we'll do this method mostly in this course for learning purposes, or you can go the automated way. So you're going to edit your templates in a YAML file, and then you use the CLI to deploy the templates, or you use a continuous delivery tool to do this automatically on the cloud. And it's recommended if you want to fully automate your flow to deploying CloudFormation templates. Now, the building blocks of CloudFormation. So your template is made of different components, and we'll have a look at them in detail, so don't be overwhelmed by this. But we have the AWS template format version, which defines the version of how to read the template. This is for internal purposes from AWS. The description, which is the comments about the template. The resources, which is the actual only mandatory section in CloudFormation, which is going to define all the AWS resources that are declared in the templates. The parameters, which are the dynamic inputs for your template, the mappings, the static variables for your template, and we'll see the differences between parameters and mappings, the outputs to get references to what has been created in your templates, conditionals, which are a list of conditions to perform resource creation, and we'll have a few template helpers, such as references and functions. But don't worry, we'll have a look at all of this and code examples in this section, so don't worry. So that's it for an introduction to CloudFormation. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture. So let's go ahead and practice using CloudFormation. So very important, first thing you need to do is to select the US East, Northern Virginia, US East 1 region. And the reason I want you to be in US East 1 is that all the templates have been designed for that region, especially when talking about AMI IDs, which are region specific. So just for the sake of learning, please use Northern Virginia, US East 1. Okay. So next, let's first have a look at CloudFormation. So this is a service. As you can see, I currently have 0 stacks. You may have some stacks if you already use Beanstalk or stuff like this, but it doesn't matter if you have 0 or more. So let's go ahead and create a stack. And we have several options. We can choose an existing template or use a sample template or build directly from Application Composer. We're going to use a sample template just so I can show you exactly what CloudFormation is made of. And then in the list of sample templates, you can use, for example, multi-AZ, simple, WordPress, blog. It doesn't really matter what you choose, but select this one. And we're not going to launch it, but we're going to click here to view it in Application Composer. So once we are in Application Composer, we get to see how our application is made. We get to see it visually and as well with code. So let me show you first the code. So you click here on Templates. And we have the option to choose YAML or JSON. So I prefer YAML, but some people prefer JSON, but I prefer YAML for the readability. And this is what we're going to do in this course. And so this entire file right here is your YAML template of your CloudFormation file. And as you can see, there's a lot of code. We have a lot of things to look at. And right now we don't know anything about CloudFormation. So don't worry too much about this, but later on in this course, you'll be able to understand at least some of it. So this template is actually rendering into components. And these components can be a lot of things. And so this is why you can see here in the canvas what these components are. So if you were to zoom in, for example, you see here we have a web server security group, a launch config, a web server group. Here we have a database instance, a database security group, and so on. So if you click on it, you can see, for example, that there are some resource configuration directly from the CloudFormation template that are here. So bottom line is you have a direct representation of your CloudFormation template directly in a visual setting, which is very nice. So now we know that this code right here corresponds to some resources in AWS. So now instead, let's go back to CloudFormation. So we're not going to deploy that template because it would be useless and it would cost us some money. Instead, we're going to create a stack, and this time we're going to use the code that I've provided. So first, let's have a look at the files we have. So within your code, go to CloudFormation, and you will find 0 just ec2.yaml. And open this file, and this is our first YAML file. So let's have a look at what it does. So we have resources, and this is the mandatory thing that you need to have in your CloudFormation templates. And then you have a name of your first CloudFormation resource named My Instance. The type of My Instance is AWS EC2 instance, this right here. And by the way, all the pop-ups you see is just made of VS Code and the CloudFormation plugin for VS Code, but don't worry if you don't have it. So the type is EC2 instance. And then we have properties. And so we're saying, hey, please create an EC2 instance. And the first thing is that the availability zone must be US East 1A. The image ID, the AMI ID should be this AMI. And the instance type should be T2 micro. And these 3 parameters are enough for us to start using and creating an EC2 instance in which we have specified a few parameters. So as you can see, nothing has been decided and defined in the console, only through code. So let's upload a template file and let's choose 0 just ec2.yaml, and we're going to name it ec2 instance demo, and next. And right now we have no tags, no permissions. We are not going to look at these settings either, or those. They will come in due time when we look at the rest of the lectures in CloudFormation. So right now we just have a template. The template is ready. As you can see, it has been uploaded to Amazon S3 by AWS. So when we click on upload a file, it goes to S3, and then CloudFormation is referencing this file in Amazon S3. And finally, if we're good to go, then we click on submit, and voila, our first stack is being created. So now, as you can see in events, we have one event, which is that the stack is being created. Now, if I refresh this, as you can see, there is my instance create in progress, and it was very quick. Now my instance is in create complete. And what that means is that the EC2 instance has been created. Now, how do I access it? Well, if you click on resources, here you see that one resource has been created, and the physical ID is right here. And if you click on it, this takes you directly into the Amazon EC2 console for you to look at this EC2 instance that has been created by CloudFormation. So as we can see, the instance type is T2 Micro, just as you requested it. If we have a look at the availability zone, which is, I'm not exactly sure where, it's going to be right here, US East 1A. And if we have a look at the AMI, is going to be using the Amazon image that we've requested, exactly that one, which is Amazon Linux 2023. So this EC2 instance was created exactly as it was requested in the CloudFormation template. On top of it, if you look at tags, you can see that this instance has been tagged by CloudFormation. We have the stack ID, the logical ID, and the stack name that have been tagged properly. So stack name is EC2 instance demo. The logical ID of my resource is my instance, and then the stack ID is a link to the ID of my CloudFormation stack. So now going back here, we can have a look at the stack info, the events, which is all the events that happen to my creation of my stack, the resources, which is linked to the resources that are being created. Outputs, we currently have nothing, parameters, nothing, and template is the exact template as we uploaded it. And that's it. So now we've seen the power of CloudFormation. We started to create one EC2 instance directly from the template, and I will see you in the next lecture for more hands-on on CloudFormation. Update it. And the only way to update a CloudFormation stack, if you click on update, is to replace the current template, or if you want to say use the current template, it's going to just use the same as it was, but you cannot modify it. So we want to replace the current template with a new one. And so for this, let's go into our code and let's go to one EC2 with sgeip.yaml. And this one is actually an update over the previous one. So we have created a new template and we've added a lot of things that we're going to learn about in this course. But we have a parameter, we have the resources of the EC2 instance, which has more parameters. So it has security groups attached to it. And so we are referencing security groups that are being created later on. So before that, we also have an elastic IP, which is attached to my EC2 instance, and then one security group here and a second security group here. So we will have a look at these in greater detail later on. So no need to look at it too much, but you can start to have a look and see if you can read these CloudFormation templates. The idea is that things are changing. So let's upload a template file, and we're going to choose one with sgeip.yaml. So we click on next, and we are prompted with a parameter being called security group description. This is coming straight from this. So we are going to have to enter, this is a cool security group, and you can enter whatever you want here. I just want to show you the effect of this in a second. Let's click on next, and we scroll down, next, and we have a look at the summary. So we're going to specify now stack details with a new security group description. And at the bottom, we have access to a change set preview. So a change set represents a list of things that is going to change as part of your CloudFormation updates. And as we can see here, 4 things are going to happen. The first one is that it will be added a elastic IP. It will be added an SSH security group of type security group, a server security group of type security group, and finally, my instance, which was my EC2 instance from before, is going to be replaced. Replacement true. That means that the previous one is going to be terminated and the new one will be created to replace it. Sometimes you will have replacement false, which means that the resource can have a change in place. And that is for CloudFormation to define and to say based on the changes you've operated. And of course, if you're not happy with it, you can try to understand why there is a replacement and change your code and hopefully get the outcome you want. But here now we have replacement true. So let's submit this. And as you can see now, in the same stack, we now have an update in progress. So we refresh, and the first two things that are happening is that we have a server security group and an SSH security group being created. And then after this, we have my EC2 instance that is going to be updated, and it says the requested update requires the creation of a new physical resource, hence creating one. This is due to replacement true. And so what we can observe is that if we go to EC2 instances and refresh, so let's remove this filter. Now we have access to the previous instance and then this new instance that is being created. That's why it's in a pending state, which is going to replace the previous one. So now it is in the running state. So back into CloudFormation, I'm going to refresh this. As you can see, the new resource is being created. Now we have the elastic IP being created. So create in progress. And if we have a look at on the left-hand side, the elastic IPs, we're going to find this elastic IP that has been created. And if we have a look at the tags of this elastic IP, as you can see, it has again been tagged. So it has a logical ID, a stack ID, and a stack name in its tag. So all of this is done automatically by CloudFormation. And so if we refresh, and as you can see, this elastic IP is going to be attached to my EC2 instance, and the previous one is going to be deleted because there is a replacement. So back in here, let's refresh. As you can see, this one is shutting down and being terminated. And the one that was created, if we have a look at the public IP, it is right here, and it corresponds to this elastic IP address. As you can see, if we look at the summary of this elastic IP has an associated instance ID, which is the one that was created by CloudFormation. So this is extremely powerful. Of course, we can go to security and have a look that, yes, indeed, two security groups have been attached to my EC2 instance. And we can have a look at them both. So 1 and 2 in here. So this first one is the SSH security group and has an inbound rule on port 22. And if you have a look at the tags, well, again, it has been tagged by CloudFormation as expected. And if we have a look at the second one, this server security group, then we have more rules, SSH and HTTP. And on top of it, if we look at the description of this group, it says this is a cool security group. So the parameter that we put actually helped us write at runtime the description of this security group, and that's the whole power of parameters. So back into my CloudFormation stack, I can refresh. I'm in update complete. And now if I have a look at my resources, we now have 4 resources that we just looked at under my CloudFormation stack. The parameter we set from before, which was this is a cool security group, got inserted as the security group description for this one security group. And we've seen the whole power of doing updates through CloudFormation. Again, nothing was done manually. The template was updated and uploaded. And then here we go. CloudFormation figured out how to get to the final state. Now, to clean up CloudFormation, you could right-click here and terminate your instance, but then it's going to be a problem because your security groups are still going to be here, your elastic IP is still going to be here, and so on. So how do we clean up? Well, actually, from CloudFormation, you can click on delete, and to delete a stack, this will delete all the stack resources. And this will clean up everything that was created by CloudFormation. So I'm going to do it right now. Now we have a delete in progress. And if you have a look at your events again, my elastic IP is being deleted. Then the next thing being deleted is my EC2 instance. So if I refresh this, now it's shutting down. And then finally, we will have our security groups. And the cool thing about it is that CloudFormation was able to determine on its own the order of which it should delete things, which is very handy. So from CloudFormation, you've seen how to create, how to update, and how to delete all resources within a stack. And hopefully that is a good intro to the power of CloudFormation. So I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture. So in this course and in CloudFormation, I think what you will see most often is going to be YAML templates. And YAML is a language as well as JSON that you can use to write CloudFormation templates. I personally think that JSON is a horrible way to write CloudFormation templates because of many string interpolations and so on. And YAML is great in so many ways, especially for readability and to construct it in an easy manner. So let's learn a little bit more about YAML in this lecture so you feel confident about reading these things. So on the left-hand side, what I have, as you can expect, is a YAML document. And a YAML document is made of key value pairs. And as we can see on the left-hand side, the first one we have is invoice. Invoice with a value, it's a number. We have date, and then we have a string. And then we have bill to. And within bill to, as you can see, the column has a indentation to the right, and then we have multiple key value pairs. So it turns out that this is what's called a nested object. So we can nest objects within JSON. And so the bill to key has access to an object within given Chris, family Dumars, and then address and so on is another nested object. It supports arrays. So if you look at products, there is a minus sign here, which represents an array. So we have multiple products. So this is the first one, and this is the second one. And in each product, we have SKU, we have a quantity, we have a description, and a price. And it supports multi-line strings. So around address lines, we have a vertical bar here, which represents a multi-line string. And also we can include comments. They haven't been represented here, but I will show you them in our own CloudFormation templates. So learning how to read YAML and how to make sense of it is very important, and better if you can even write it. But let's have a look at the CloudFormation templates we have used so far. So this one is a CloudFormation template. The first block was resources. We have a nested object within resources. We had my instance, which had another nested object, and the type was a key value. So type was EC2 instance. This is a string. And then properties also was a nested object in which we had 3 key value pairs. If we have a look at this one, we had again a bunch of nested objects here too. Here we have a dash. So we have a list of security groups here. Here's the first security group, and here is the second security group. We also had a hash sign here. So hash is for comments. So here you can have comments in CloudFormation in YAML, which is very, very nice. And here is another list made of one element, but still it's a list. And here is a list of 2 elements. So as we can see, YAML makes our templates very easy to read, in my opinion. And once you get used to it, you really unleash the power of CloudFormation. So that's it. I hope this introduction to YAML was good for you. And I will see you in the next lecture. So now let's talk about the resources. And as I said before, the resources are the core of your CloudFormation template, and this is the only mandatory section in your entire CloudFormation templates. These resources are going to represent the different AWS components that will be created and configured as part of your templates. The resources are declared and can reference each other, and then AWS is going to figure out the creation, the updates, and the deletes of the resources for us. There are so many types of resources. They are always increasing in number. Right now, there are over 700 types of resources, and I can't teach you them all, but I can teach you how to read the documentation. So the resource type identifiers are going to be in the form of service provider, : service name, so : data type name. So how do we find the resource documentation? Well, there's a page I'm going to show you right now which has them all. Then we just read the docs, and by the knowledge acquired in this course and the docs, we should be good to go. So let's have a look at these 2 links. So the first link represents all the possible CloudFormation resources. So we can see here the format, and then we can select the resource type. So for example, let's have a look at Amazon Kinesis. within Kinesis, we have 2 resource types. And if you scroll back and let's look at Amazon EC2, we have all these resources for Amazon EC2. And if we wanted to have a look at a specific one, for example, AWS EC2 instance, this is the documentation for this type. And so this is the same page as the one I had linked in my slides. So these 2 pages are the same. And so here we have the syntax of this. So we've been using this before, and the syntax is either in JSON form, which to me is very difficult to read, or YAML. And so we can have a look at the type, it's EC2 instance, and then we get properties. And properties are a list of key value pairs. As you can see, they're all here. And by clicking on one of them, you get to learn how to use it. For example, if you click on IAM instance profile, you click on it, and then you get the information that this is the name of an IAM instance profile. Then it tells you how to create an instance profile by going here, and then you would have to look at the YAML form and see how to create it. And then it tells us that it's not required, so we haven't been using it, so it's not a mandatory property to fill in to create an EC2 instance. The type is string, and if you do add it, or if you do create it on an existing EC2 instance, it requires no interruption. That means that the EC2 instance is not going to be stopped, it's not going to be terminated or replaced. But if you were to change the image ID, the AMI ID, then the update requires a replacement, of course, right? So you get an access of all the syntax, of all the properties, of the return values, the examples that show in YAML and in JSON how to use these things. So it's quite handy, as well as more links if need be. So going back into our stack, we had a look at just EC2 YAML. So we have type EC2 instance, and we had 3 properties that we put in: availability zone, image ID, and instance type. And if we have a look at this one, we had an EC2 instance, but it also had security groups. So as you can see, it's a list. So going back into the documentation, let's have a look at the syntax and click on security groups ID. So security groups, here we go, security groups. And it says it's an array of string, and it says here are the names of the security groups. So very easy. And then we have these